Cool.
To the desk.
Hey everyone, I'm Donna Druchunas, and this is a Procreate and Tech Tips session with Sequential Artists Workshop. So we're going to be looking at how to make our own set of comics brushes today. So I'm going to switch my camera to my iPad, and I will spotlight this for everyone, and I'll show you what we're going to do, because it's going to be fun. And if you wanted to do this for yourself, you would have a unique set of brushes for your iPad that would, give your art a unique and unmatched look. So this is just a spreadsheet that I've made that I just wanted to show you. We're going to do a pencil brush, and I made a pencil brush and I drew with my pencil brush there. We're going to do a pen or an inking brush, a flatter or a solid color brush, and then a shader, which is like a fluffy texture brush for adding shadows and highlights. So those are the four brushes we're going to make. Now, that gets you a good way into comics, from penciling, inking, and coloring. Or you could use these also for adding solid blacks and grayscale shading if you were staying with black and white. Of course, you can use fewer or more brushes in your work, but this is just a thing I made. And there's a list of subjects on the side. And where those come from is the brush library. We've been looking at this in several of the recent classes, and it's in several of the videos in the YouTube playlist. We've been looking in this brush studio and brush library a lot. Did 3 or 4 other classes on that. But that list comes from inside here. So when you click on the brush here and you get your list of brushes, if you touch one and then touch it a second time, this brush studio comes up. And so the list that I made is some of the things from this. We're not going to do we're not going to be editing all of these in our brushes today, but we will be using some of these to create new brushes. So if you're going to create some brushes and you want to kind of plan them, you can make a sheet like this. Also, what could be handy is doing this to learn about how the brush thing works. You could do this for some brushes that come with Procreate, just to see how they work. So for example, this first 4 brushes that I've put in this folder for our class are copies of brushes that come with Procreate. So the Durant is a pencil brush. And if I open up the library and look through it, I can see that what the settings are for stroke properties. The spacing is turned all the way down. There's no stabilization on. There's a little taper is used. We'll go through all of these more, but I'm just showing you. You could write these down in a spreadsheet or a piece of paper. What kind of shape is used? Is any grain used? And then we're going to skip down to Apple Pencil to look at pressure and tilt settings and the general properties of the brush. So you could go through some brushes you like and write these things down, and then make a description of the brush, or like I did here, draw with it, and then it will help you kind of understand what the settings do. But I did this, and then if you want to plan your own brushes, you could write these down in advance. I wrote these down after the fact of the brushes that I made for this class, just so that I would have it and I could show it to you and look at what we're going to do. So we're going to make a pencil brush first. And so these are the settings I used in my pencil brush. And I'll go through my brush and then we'll make one together. So I have a stroke path set as what I consider a fairly large number. Most of my other brushes are smaller. I didn't use stabilization for my pencil because I don't want the line. I want the line to be really just as shaky as my hand is. I don't want it to smooth out. I didn't care about taper because I never sharpen my pencils, so I didn't care about having a sharp point on my line. So this is something you might choose. Again, I don't sharpen my pencils, so I used a blurry shape. I used a blurry shape and I used pencil texture. It's one of the images in the chat there. But ideally you would draw your own, but I sent you one you could use today if you're in the live class. And I did the Apple Pencil. I used some opacity on it, and I used the Apple Pencil slant so I can go like this and get it like I'm actually using the side of the pencil point. And I messed with the size, max size, because I wanted it to be like a pencil, so I didn't want it to be able to get, to be as fat as my thumb when I use it in Procreate. So I turned the max size down to 25%. So so I can't make it into a giant thing. It's a pencil. So ideally what you would do if you want to make a pencil brush, which we will do together now, ideally what you would do is to make your own texture. I used these two pencils for mine. So I have this Derwent ink, like graphitint pencils, which are like colored pencils that I like. And I have this big fat pencil that I like. So these are pencils that I use a lot. And like I said, I never sharpen my pencils, so there's no sharp points on them. Um, and you play around on some paper and make some pencil textures, and see what you can get with different pencils on different papers. And you'll use this to make your pencil brush. But I sent you one in the chat, like I said, that you can use today to practice. But you would do this and then take a picture of it. Yeah, just a photo with your iPad or your iPad, I guess, because you'll be using it for this. And you can see how you get different textures with different papers. And you can even smudge it with your finger if you want to make it a little bit solid. So whatever you want for your pencil kind of texture. So whenever you're making a brushes, you'll be working with the square canvas. So I've already made one, but if you are in Procreate, in your gallery or in a stack, and you click the plus on the side there, somewhere near the top, you'll see one that says square. So you want to do that now is make a new square canvas. And we'll be working in that same canvas for the whole class. So here's the one that I used, and I used it to make some shapes and things, and also to test my brushes. Sorry. I used it also to test my brushes. So here we've got my pencil brush, my inking brush, my solid shape or flatting brush, and then my shading brush that I used. So I drew a flat shape like this and then used my shading brush to add some highlights and shadows to that there. So that's what we're going to do now. So what I want you to do is, if you got that picture from me and you got it on your iPad, inside this document that we opened, I want you to go into the wrench and add and click insert a photo and bring in that pencil texture photo. And it's probably in this case smaller than your square document. That's okay. When you draw your own and make your unique texture, you can draw it as big as you want. You can take as high res of a photo as you want. But this works, and this is actually, I think, the one I used for my sample pencil, and it'll work for today. What we want to do is fill this whole canvas with it. So you can just, pinch and zoom, pinch it and stretch it out with the transform tool. Or in the transform tool, if you turn magnetics on under snapping magnetics on, and you click fit to canvas, no matter what shape this is, it will blow up big enough so there's no white space left. So for our pencil, that's what we want to do. We want to just fill the whole canvas with it. So what are we going to do with this pencil? Let's look at the one I made. And what are we going to do with that texture? That's going to become the grain for the pencil. If you were in the last few classes, or if you weren't, you know that all brushes in Procreate have a shape, and that's the shape of the tip of the pen or pencil. And because I never sharpen my pencil, I picked a messy shape. You can pick a very sharp circle for this, and we'll go do it together. And the shape we're going to pick from what Procreate includes. And for the grain, I used the pencil texture. You'll notice that it's nice and black and white and dark. And of course, the one we imported is blue, or whatever color we drew it in. So we have to fix that. So that's what we're going to use that for. So, yeah. Question?
So I have my, sorry, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Okay, Donna's pencil. So I have the texture up and I got it full screen. Now,
Right.
how,
And that's all we've done so far. We've just filled up our canvas with the texture.
because I don't know what pencil to use anyway, when you went under
No, we're
brush.
going to make a new one. We're going to make a new one from scratch. So first we're
Great.
going to, so yeah. So you'll be making your own pencil. So now we have
Okay.
this, and it's not black and white. So we need it to be black and white. So to do that, we will click on the adjustments magic wand there, and hue, saturation, and brightness, and we drag the saturation all the way down to 0, and there's nothing left in there but black and white. When you bring the saturation all the way down, there's no colors left. So once we have that, we turn that off. And if we want to adjust this more, and you'll have to play with this, I think this would probably work pretty good. But you notice the one I had was quite dark, and this is kind of light. We can go into the adjustments again and pick curves, and we can move the black and white points around. So if I drag, the black point is the lower left, and if I drag that in, the dark points get darker, and the white point is the upper right. If I drag that in, the light gets lighter. So because I wanted to make this darker, I'm just going to drag the black point over and make it darker. And then turn that off. So it won't come out perfect the first time you do this, but you'll have to experiment and, to get the pencil how you like it. So now we have this texture, and this is the unique thing we wanted to make for our pencil. So when you do this, as I said, for your own, you would draw your own so that it would be the way you draw with a pencil on the kind of paper that you like to draw, and you'd get that unique texture. Okay, so now we're going to go into our brush library. And if you don't have a folder from the last class, we will create a folder for what we're doing today. So when I click the brush up on the top, this opens up. To make a new folder for brushes, I have to pull this list on the left down, and then the plus sign comes at the top. So I can click that, I get a new list right at the top, and I can change the name to class or my brushes or whatever I want. And then there's no brushes in it, but we're going to make some brushes in it. And if you have a folder from last class, you can use that one. But we just don't want to mix the brushes up in some other place where we can't find them later. So everyone have a folder? Okay, so now when you have that folder highlighted, you'll see that there's a little, just a little icon next to it turns to a color. And since there's nothing in this one, you can't tell. But if that's blue, you're in that folder. Go over here in the top of this brush library in your empty folder and click plus. So now we're in this brush studio with a brand new brush. So it comes up with some settings already set. So for my, and we'll go through these and the ones that were on my list there, and I'll show you what happens. Usually for a brush that we're drawing with, we want the spacing to be 20 or less. If you bring, so watch what happens there. I get a line, right? But if I bring the spacing up higher and higher, I don't get a line anymore. I just get separate dots. So for a brush that we want to draw pencil lines with, we want that spacing to be pretty low, like 20 or less. And I left mine at 17, which is what came up as the default. But you'll learn more about this as you experiment it. So you can start anywhere under 20. The next thing on the list is stabilization. And as I said before, for my pencil, I wanted it to be really jittery, really loose. Like when I sketch with a pencil, I don't care if the lines come out crooked or anything like that. So I left these all the way down. We will be moving these up for some of our other brushes. So for now, leave them all the way down, but I'll show you what happens. I'm going to go in here and clear my drawing pad. And when these are all the way down, I can draw as fast as I want and make as messy lines as I want. But if I turn them up, all these different ones, they straighten out my lines, and I can't, if I try to draw fast, it doesn't work. It straightens out my line. So sometimes we want to do that, but for my pencils, I don't want to do that. So let me clear the drawing pad again. Okay. Like I said, I don't use taper because I don't sharpen my pencils. But what does this do? If you look right now, this is the same thickness all the way. Doesn't get thinner on the ends. If you choose taper and pull one or both ends in, and change the size and the tip and play with those, we can bring the size all the way up and watch what's changing there as I drag these things around. So the further in I draw these dots, the pointier the end gets. The size, the higher I pull the size up, this seems backwards, but the higher I pull the size up, the pointier the tip gets, or the smaller. And then the sharpness of the tip, the lower it is, the pointier it is. So you want to play with all those things. But for me, for my pencil, I don't want any of that on because I don't sharpen my pencils. So set that however you want. If you like really sharp pencils, pull those points in, and then make sure the size is pretty high and the tip is sharpness is pretty low. And you'll have a pencil that you can get pointy marks on instead of just dull marks. Okay, everyone caught up with me?
Mine is not changing the size of the tapers at all.
Okay, so you have to pull
Mine
them
isn't
in.
either. I'm not sure why. Are we looking at pressure taper or touch taper?
If you don't have an Apple Pencil, pressure taper won't do anything.
Well, I do.
And if you do,
Oh.
you have to pull them in, put the size up, put the tip down, and then you do have to mess with your pressure. If you just push hard, you might not get a point. Also, if you're not sure that it's working right here, because sometimes this drawing pad does not do what I expect it to do, you can say done. It will save your brush and we can come back and work on it again. You can say done, put a new layer in your document and test it out there.
Yeah, no.
Oh,
And for me, that always works better than the drawing pad.
Still nothing though. Where?
no.
Okay, well, it's okay.
Yeah.
So, if you want to point it to that, we'll tip sizes in, size up, tip down.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. We'll leave that for now. We'll come back to it. Okay, so now we're gonna do our shape. When you make a new brush in Procreate, we'll come back to taper and see what happens when we get done with all the other settings. If it still doesn't work, we'll troubleshoot that. But the thing after taper on the left is shape, and the default shape is a plain circle with a crisp hard line. And you can leave that as your shape if you want a really sharp, crisp pencil. or we can change the shape. So if you want to change the shape of a brush, you go up here where it says shape source and click edit, and the shape editor comes up. And then you can import something. So when you click import, you can import from your photos. So if you saved something in your photos, you can import a file, or you can import for the source library. So for our pencil, let's look in the source library. You can leave it as what it is. You don't have to change it. But if you go in the source library, you can say, oh, here, I want something a little messier because that's the way I want my pencil mark to go. Or you can say, I want it to be a little blurry. And you can just pick different things. I'm going to leave it at the hard circle that it came with for right now. But you can pick whatever you like. I actually did on mine pick one of those splotchy ones because I wanted a splotchier looking pencil mark. And after you get what you want in there from the source library, you just click done. And then in your shape window, you'll see your new shape if you changed it. And the way the brush looks when you use it will change a little bit. So I have a perfectly round shape. So basically none of these other things, the scatter really won't do anything because it's perfectly round, and the rotation won't do anything because it's perfectly round. But if I picked a shape that was not a circle, like well, this is not perfectly round. Let's say I picked that one. There it is. You can see that my pencil mark has gotten rougher in the sample. And if I pick scatter and rotation, you can see how the roughness of the line changes with those. So even without adding our pencil texture, if we choose a shape that's not a perfect circle, we get a rougher pencil. And we can play with how rough it is by changing the rotation. If you pull the rotation all the way up, it follows the way you move your pen when you're drawing. But you can put it anywhere above or below that center mark and scatter. So those are things to play with to see how rough your pencil is. I'm gonna leave mine on the bottom. Now I'm gonna move it up a little bit. Since I changed my shape, I'll move rotation all the way up, and I'll move scatter up to 48. And that gives me a rough mark. But it's still solid, right? If I color with it, it's completely solid. There's no grain in it. Okay, so does everyone have a shape and played with the scatter and stroke rotation a little bit? Okay, so then the next thing is grain. So we want to get that image we just drew. So say done and close your pencil editing and go to your document so that only the texture we drew is showing. Okay, now there's two ways you can do this because remember, when we're in the editor, we can paste things or we can import a photo. So you can go to your wrench for actions, and you can either say copy canvas to just copy that to your clipboard, and then we can paste it in. Or if you want to, you can go in the share and save it as a PNG to your photos. And then you'll have that also backed up in your photos. So I'm going to do is just copy canvas. So it's add, copy canvas. And then we'll go back into our brush. So click the brush again to open the library, then click on the brush we want to edit. And when that opens, since we were on grain, it should still be on grain. But if you had clicked on something else, just click on grain in our new pencil. And this will work for the beginning part, just like the shape. We can click edit and then import. So now if you had saved that as a photo, as a PNG in your photos, you can say import photo, but I'm just going to say paste because I copied the canvas to my clipboard. So I can say paste, and there is my grain.
Donna,
Yes,
can you save it as a JPEG or does it have to be saved as PNG?
I usually use PNG because JPEGs have a lossy compression and they may it doesn't always save it exactly as it looks like. So
Okay.
it might blend some pixels or something in there. So but if you did it as a JPEG, it would still work. It just might not be exact as precise as you wanted it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So now there's a thing up here called auto repeat. And when you click on that, you can see what your texture would look like if it was filling a whole page. And you can move these settings around. You can make it bigger if you want with the grain scale. You can rotate it. I don't want to rotate it because I want it to be like that. You can have this border overlap. So when it makes the repeat, it overlaps the pieces so they kind of blur. And you can have a hardness on the mask. And you can just play with those and see what happens when you click on them until you get something you think you might like. And you may have to come back and play with this again later. So I'll put border overlap up high, mask hardness near the
I
bottom.
have a quick question. Why would
Yes.
you do that? Why would you just use the grain, the picture that we put in?
Well, if you're going to if you don't have any of these, you if you change these things, sometimes it looks more like pieces glued together, and sometimes it looks less, depending on what settings you change. So sometimes you want to change them because it looks too choppy, but you can leave it just how it is as well.
But why didn't we just use the single one?
We did. We just looked at
Oh.
what auto repeat doesn't change it. It's still the single grain. It's still
Yeah,
a single grain. This is just
yeah.
a demonstration of what it will look like if you colored a whole page with it, which we're probably never going to do, but you might. So
I understand.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you don't have to look in here at all, but you can. I just wanted you to know what that was. And I actually did go on my pencil and played around with a little bit to make me happier with it.
And
then-
Donna, sorry,
Yeah.
on that, what's mirror overlap and pyramid bleeding?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I could never get them to visibly change anything for me. So I guess when the overlap is like this, the mirror would flip the overlapping part. You can't really see exactly what it's doing. It's a software thing. And pyramid, I don't know at all what it does. But
Okay.
it changes the way the squares blend together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
yeah. So look at my line now after I added the grain when I draw with my pencil here. It's not solid black anymore. It's got texture. And I can go into this at the top of the drawing pad, and I can change my preview size smaller to make this look more like a pencil instead of like a fat marker while I'm testing it. You can change the color and the preview size of stuff in the drawing pad and clear the drawing pad and start over from this little menu up here. So we've got a grain and it's not solid. And then there's all things you can do to the grain. There's the two main things is moving and textured. So I'm gonna make my brush fat again because I want to kind of show you the difference, and I think you'll be able to see it this way. A moving grain rolls around, and there's all kinds of settings you can put to it. So you can click on the number and type a number in. You can scale it up and down, but a moving grain goes with the pencil. And so then you can drag this and see what it would look like with different settings. So you can mess with the grain that way. and play with all those. So that the moving grain has all these settings, and it will change how dark it is, how rough it is, how big the texture is. For pencil, we probably want to keep it pretty small, and how it moves with the brush. So, and you can see the texture is getting changed inside the line as we change all these things with moving. If you pick textured, it's like the brush is just drawing the texture. It doesn't change at all. You can make it bigger and things here, but it doesn't move. See, the texture is just under there. It's almost like you're erasing a layer above it and showing the texture. So that's what texturized is, whereas moving gives you a completely different look. So there is no right answer to which one to pick. I used moving, but you can pick whichever one you want to try out for your pencil. But I used moving for mine. And then I just played with these. I didn't want it to be too dark. If you bring the depth down, it gets really dark. So I kept my depth up high. And again, you can play with the rotation here. If you didn't rotate it inside the grain editor, you can rotate it here for the moving version. And there's just things to play with. I didn't bother with the bottom part. I didn't change anything on the bottom part. So then we have a grain. And that we're almost done. So we're going to skip 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to go to Apple Pencil. So for me, what I wanted to do with the Apple Pencil is make it so that when I tilt my pencil, I can get something different than when I use the tip. And right now, if I tilt my pencil, it's pretty much almost exactly the same as it is exactly the same as if I use the tip. So if I go down here to tilt, I can say, what do I want to happen when I use the side of my pencil? And I can say, I want it to be bigger. I want it to be a little bit lighter. Bleed makes it lighter. So if you bring it too far, it disappears. But I want it to be a little bit lighter than the tip. So here's my tip. Here's my side. I want it to be even a little bigger. You can play with gradation and you can play with opacity. So, I want it to be a little bit, maybe a little bit transparent when I do the side instead of sharp like the tip. So I did that on mine because that way, that's kind of how a real pencil works, right? You can get a nice skinny line with the tip and you can do shading with the side. And you can also drag this around to tells how much you have to tip the pencil to make it do that. I didn't change that, whatever it was. But if you move it up high, it'll change when you only tip the pencil a little, and when you move it down, you have to tip the pencil more. Kind of goes with the picture. Yeah. So I did that because I wanted it to do that. Not all the pencils in Procreate do that, so you do not have to use this if you want. You might want your pencil to get thicker when you press harder. So you can say pressure increase the size. You might want your pencil to work that way. A real pencil doesn't work that way to me, so I didn't do that. But you can, depends how realistic you want it to be. Then the last thing I did was in properties underneath Apple Pencil. I turned the maximum size down to like 25% here because, like I said, I wanted this to act like a real pencil, like a regular, pencil like this, not like a big fat. I didn't want it to draw like this. I wanted it to be like this. So by lowering the maximum size, I make my brush behave like a real pencil rather than like a fat pencil or crayon. And that's, again, a preference. That's the only thing I changed in there. I didn't change anything else. We will be changing some of these other things for the inking brushes though. And then with skip materials and in about this brush, at the very top there, you can click and type in a new brush name. So you can put in my brush, my pencil, or whatever. And then if you like, oh, look, I think my thing did a Lithuanian spell check. Pencilinas. If you want to, you can put in your name and sign your brush.
How do you do that again? Sorry, how do you change
Just
the?
click up here. Just click right up here.
I have
And you
drawing
can,
there. Setting, okay, my
so
pencil.
we're in the about this brush on the bottom. And
Oh,
then
I'm sorry,
yeah,
okay.
on the bottom left, all the way down in about this brush. And then once you click that, in the next column, all the way at the top is the name of the brush, and you can change that to whatever you want.
Okay,
And you can click where the name is, and you can put your name in if you want. You can sign it. And I suggest you click create a new reset point. That saves everything you just did, so you can go back to it if you make changes later. This all is optional, but I think you don't want to have a bunch of brushes called untitled, so at least change the name of your brush to something. The rest of it is more important if you're going to be selling your brushes or sharing them with other people. And then click done, and we go out and we can make a new layer and pick our new pencil brush. And I usually use gray, not black, when I'm using a pencil brush, and we can draw with it, test out what happens if we tilt our pencil on the side, and see if we like it. And if we don't, we'd go back in. We might say, I don't like that grain, it's too blotchy, or I don't like it's too rough, or the point is too sharp, or whatever. You can go in and change any of those things.
I love my new brush.
Yay. We're probably gonna have to continue this, because we're not gonna get 4 brushes done. In fact, then we're not even going to start another brush right now because it's already 1:45. But let me show you what I did on my other brushes, and then we will make at least one more brush next week so that you can try some different settings. And actually, we'll probably go faster next week because we've already gone through all the basic steps. And but what we're going to do is we're going to make an inker, a flatting brush, and a shading brush. And those are the ones I showed you here that I did. And so I used different shapes for those. For my shading brush, I actually used a picture of a cloud. And I gave you a picture of a cloud in the chat. You can save that if you want, or you can go take a picture of a cloud or get a picture of a cloud off the internet. I used that for the shape on my shading brush. And then we will want to do some kind of watercolor circle that we will use to make our painting brush. So we'll make some kind of circle with watercolor or gouache and take pictures of it. I gave you one in the chat there for those of you that are here live. You can find some online too, but of course, to make our own brushes, we want to use our own style. So use a pretty dark color, because remember, we're going to have to change everything to black and white eventually. So you want it to stand out from the paper. You know, I might choose this one or this one if I was going to do these. And again, you'll decide, like, I might want to make a less solid brush or a less smooth painting brush. I called it a flatting brush. So for a flatting brush where you want to make really smooth edges, you want to have a hard edge on your watercolor circle, but you're not required to do that. A flatting brush is just a style of coloring brush that a lot of makers use to fill in solid shapes. Sometimes I color my things without using that kind of brush at all. So what we're going to end up with is, and I'm just going to go to a blank layer and show you what we'll finish doing next time. So I did a pencil brush last time. I did my own before the class. And so you'll have the one you made now, or you can make another one with your own, colors, do some scribbling and make some pencil texture and take your own photo and make a unique one if you want. But if you're happy with the way the one you made came out, keep it. Then we're going to make an inking brush. And in my inking brush, I made obviously a lot of different settings than I made in my pencil brush. For example, I turned up stabilization because when I ink, I want my lines to look kind of smooth. I don't want them to look like my hand is shaking. So so that's what the streamline stabilization does. I did make it pointy. I used a little oval shape because I was thinking that I like a fountain pen that bleeds a little on the edges. So I didn't put a hard shape for my tip. I used like a kind of soft shape and no grain because I wanted it to be solid black. And we'll go, like I said, we'll go through this again. I just wanted to show you what's different than the pencil. This is something that Beth was asking about the other day. How to make sure that the ends are completely solid and don't get transparent. You want to turn opacity to none under pressure on the Apple Pencil.
Okay.
And that'll make your lines not get transparent at the ends the way some of the brushes do in Procreate. So you can see I did it different. I did it different than the pencil. And again, I did these very different too. So different spacing, different stabilization, a different taper. I will work on this taper thing so we can dig into that more next time. And those of you that had a problem with it, we'll talk offline in the Mighty Network and figure it out. I didn't do anything with the tilt on my painting brush, but I did make the pressure Apple Pencil setting go up so that when I press hard, I can make it really fat for filling in an area when I'm painting. So we'll make, all these little settings that we choose differently make the brushes very different. So this brush I can make really fat if I took my inker and drew a shape and then made another layer underneath, then I could take my color with my flatting brush or my painting brush, whatever you want to call it, and I can fill this in pretty quickly with a nice solid color. So that's what that's for. And then this last one, the shading brush, of course, is very different. It has the cloud shape. I didn't put any grain in because the cloud shape that I picked gave it enough texture for what I was doing. And I changed a lot of settings in the mostly in the shape area with the scatter and the rotation. Yeah. And so I didn't bother with this here. Now here I see when opacity is at max, it does a completely different thing than none. But because my brush shape is not solid black and white, it's going to come out kind of grayscale anyway, because this is got shades of gray in it. So we will go through and make some more brushes next time, and so that we have a whole set. Do you guys have any questions just on the basics of the brush stuff before we wrap it up for today?
Next time is in 2 weeks.
Next time's in 2 weeks, yes. So I think since we went through the basics, and you guys can review this video again, it'll go up in the SAW YouTube channel, and then we'll be able to go through making the other ones a little bit quicker. So make yourself some watercolor circles and take some pictures of them so that we can use them for your painting brush to be your own painting, and get some pictures of some clouds or fluffy cotton balls or something that's like kind of soft. You could take, say, some paprika and put it on a piece of paper and take a picture of that. Anything that's like somewhat soft but textury, you know, like a cloud or cotton ball. Like the paprika is kind of like dust, so that gives the same kind of thing where you're going to get a little texture, but it's shady. It's not like you're taking a picture of a brick wall or something. It's softer than that. And we'll use those to make our inker, flatting brush, and shading brush at the next session. And then if you use those for your comics, they won't look all like anyone else's. Because it's, you know, there are some brushes that are so popular on the internet that that I can tell that something was made with them. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, just like a lot of comics artists use the G nib on a dip pen, and you can tell when they do because it behaves in a certain way. Then there's nothing wrong with that either. But it's fun to kind of do this, and then you'll just learn a lot, because the things that you learn here, if there's something in a brush that came with Procreate, like the syrup brush, say, and there's something you don't like in it, you can go in and change that. You can change the spacing, you can change the, you know, play around with the rotation. If it has grain, you can play with it. So all the settings that you use to make your own brushes, you use to edit other brushes that maybe came with Procreate or that you got somewhere else. So,
I have
yeah.
a very silly quick question. Why is my drawing pad with a black background?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, I hate that.
Me too.
I hate that.
I
So
hate it.
in Procreate, you want to go into the to the wrench,
All right, hold on a
and
second.
then preferences, prefs it says,
Yep.
and the top one says light interface. Click that and everything will turn light.
Oh, thank goodness. I just couldn't
Yeah,
take
I
it.
hate the black interface. I can't see it
Like,
good
what is
enough.
that? Yeah. Okay,
Um,
perfect. Thank you.
you have to have a file open, a canvas open, and then you go into the wrench, and there's a little thing on the right under actions that says prefs. When you click the prefs, the first thing on that list says light interface. And
But
that'll
then
change
it
all those
turns-
black menus to light gray menus with black text.
Okay, yeah, then everything got white.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So
how
for
do
those
you
of us who have maybe older eyes, or, you know, it's a lot easier to see when it's dark text on a light background.
right.
Yeah.
And also, how do you get your pencil, the color to be the default color to be gray instead of black?
Oh, there's no default. You just, when you go
Okay.
into the color picker, you pick
Needs
gray.
picking. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
There's no default color for any brush. So I just choose gray instead of choosing solid black when I'm using a pencil brush, because it feels more
Okay.
like a pencil to me that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, you can pick any color and say it's a colored pencil, right? So that's
Yeah.
not
Done. Perfect.
anything
Love
special.
it. Happy
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Because the only black pencil I've ever used that's really black is a black colored pencil. You know,
Right.
graphite is
Yeah.
gray, it's not black. So you just pick whatever color you like out of your color picker. That's
Right.
feels
Fair
like
enough.
it matches graphite to you. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
have any specific numbers type in or anything for that. I actually don't use a pencil very much in real life or digitally. I just dive in with ink. And you know, it's a lot less scary on the iPad because you can do undo and erase the ink. You know, if you do it
Yeah.
on paper, then you have to either put white out on it, or I've
Oh.
been putting masking tape over my mistakes and redrawing over them.
I remember
But, you know, it's
taking
less scary
paper.
on the iPad. Yeah.
Yeah,
But when you go straight to ink, but that's just me. I just like to go straight to ink.
Yeah.
But most comics artists do thumbnails and, you know, some kind of penciling and stuff before they draw their ink. So it
I do.
makes it,
It's just like
yeah.
old school, you know, even on the Procreate, that's what I do. I do it with a pencil
well,
first.
it
I
lets
just,
you kind of build up your
yeah,
specificity, I guess. Your pencil sketches can be just like, where is this person going to go and how big are they going to be? You don't have to know exactly what their nose looks like yet or anything, right? So you
right.
can, and then you add more specificity when you ink it. So it's just a different way to do it. I just find that I get really bogged down in trying to make things too perfect, and then I don't like them as much as my quick drawings.
Right, right.
Yeah, and that's just me. You know, there's comics I love that are done like so beautifully and precise that I could only dream of ever being able to do that. And there's comics that I love or that are just, you know, that, you know, the kind that people say, oh, my kid could do that. Well, they couldn't, but
Right, right, right.
it kind of
Oh.
gives you that idea because it's more loose or freestyle, I guess. Yeah. So
You know, and still not getting the tip on this changing. So weird.
yeah, I am gonna have to look into that. I don't
Oh, let
I
me
don't
just see
know
table
because
properties. Classic, will that do? No.
you can click, if you click link tip sizes, it just makes them,
It's not,
yeah. I don't use that. I mean, I haven't,
I mean, for the brushes, you kind of want it, but
yeah, it should work. So you might just want to go back and create a new brush from scratch. Don't change anything else and go to the taper section and try to play with that. And
yeah,
also go into some brushes that have taper settings that you like and see what they have.
good point.
And I will do the same thing and we will try to figure out what's going on with that. Yeah, because I don't know offhand what that could be, but I'm sure that if I Google it, I will find it. Anytime you have a problem with technology and you Google it, you will find there are at least 1,000 other people that have the exact same question and problem that you do.
Yeah.
So someone else has already figured it out usually, and you can get the answer from them. So that's what I'll do. I'll do a little research for you guys on that.
Yeah, I'm working on
Okay.
it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Could
Yeah.
I
Any
ask-
other questions, Susan?
Thanks.
I have some still like just some ink drawings on paper. If I wanted to animate them, can I do that in Procreate or do I use another? Like if I scanned the drawings in a series of drawings, would I use another app or is
You
that?
can do animation in Procreate. Each layer is like a cell in the, it has a thing in the wrench, just like we were looking at for the preferences. In the wrench, if you go to Canvas,
Okay.
there's a thing called Animation Assist.
Oh, okay.
If you turn that on, what it does is it makes each layer in your Procreate file or each group of layers into a separate animation cell. That's about all I know about it because I haven't really done any animation in Procreate, but it does have that basic animation feature in it. And Procreate's coming out with a new app
Okay,
called
so that's
or something that's totally for animation, but it's
Yeah,
it's
that's what I would look at if you
But-
were into
But yeah, if
animation.
you want to do some simple animations, like have your characters moving around a little for Instagram or something, you can do that in Procreate.
okay. Thank
The
you.
only thing it does is it makes the layers into cells. It doesn't have any other animation features built in it. But
Okay,
if you
thank you.
draw on your
Wait.
separate cells, you just scan them in and put them in layers, and then yeah.
Right. Thank you. That's helpful.
Mhm. Okay, comic artists, I'll see you around and we'll be back here in 2 weeks. And otherwise I'll see you in some other places in the cyber world.
In the cyber world.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Donna.
Bye-bye.
Donna.